Hello everybody and welcome back to Big Johnny D History. Today we resume our look at Epic History series on Napoleon Bonaparte as we resume his first campaign, his Italian campaign, as we discuss the Battle of Bassano today. The last time we left off, we discussed the Battle of Castiglione, which I did not know was as much of a tactical, impressive victory as it was. In my opinion, and I said this in the last video, it should be regarded as one of Napoleon's best victories in terms of a tactical standpoint. But we're moving forward talking about the Battle of Bassano. Very quickly, I wanted to address in my last video on Castiglione, I accidentally left in myself repeating the intro, audio checking, messing up the intro for about 3.5 minutes, which I thought was kind of funny, but also kind of embarrassing. I apologize for that editing mistake, but we're moving on past it. It won't happen again. I accidentally uploaded the raw file instead of the edited file. I will not be making that mistake again. I have a new system. But without further ado, let's jump into this with the Battle of Bassano.
MF Productions collaboration. In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age.
I'm pretty sure I just realized this. Have they been playing the same intro for each of these Italian campaigns? I feel like they have. I just noticed it now because I believe I said it in the previous 2 videos on Lodi and Castiglione that their intro is absolutely incredible and that it gives me chills. Well, it gave me chills again, even though I realized I've heard it before. That's a testament to how great Epic History is combining the music with the presentation and the information to make just phenomenal content.
August 1796. The war between France's infant republic and the coalition seems to be tipping in France's favor. In the Vendée, General Hoche has brought the 3-year royalist revolt to an end. This appalling civil war has cost an estimated 165,000 lives and is the bloodiest chapter of the French Revolution.
And that's really saying something when you consider the Reign of Terror and the White Terror that followed that this civil war was the bloodiest action. It truly was. 130,000 people. People don't realize how tame the American Revolution was in comparison to the French Revolution and other revolutions that have happened. But in particular, the French Revolution is widely known mainly for its bloodbath, for its just absolute horrendous actions that were committed against the people of France.
Bourbon Spain allies with France. They will combine forces against their common enemy, Great Britain.
And it's debatable if this idea between France and Spain combining their navy would have actually been able to get to Great Britain, even regardless of the Battle of Trafalgar. Even if the French won that battle, which if they did win that battle, it wouldn't have been conclusive. So we have to assume that that battle didn't happen at all in order to, assume, well, let's say Horatio Nelson tries his tactic where he, instead of going side to side, flips the ships and charges. Let's say that completely fails. Let's say the French and the Spanish win an astonishing victory. Would have an invasion of Great Britain worked with the fleet, even combined? Because the British Navy wasn't all in that one fleet. Yes, that battle highly tipped the scales, and it was the 2 largest fleets in the world at that moment. It was the world's biggest naval battle up to that point. But it's not like the British Navy was purely at Trafalgar. Granted, they would have lost a lot of ships, but do you think that France would have been, and Napoleon would have been able to launch an invasion of Britain even if Trafalgar went the other way? Personally, I err on the side that it probably wouldn't have worked out.
In Germany, the armies of General Jourdan and General Moreau have crossed the Rhine and are advancing on Vienna. While in Italy, Napoleon's stunning victory at Castiglione has sent the Austrians scurrying back to the Tyrol. Napoleon can now resume his siege of Mantua, the key to Italy. But he'll have to start over. The Austrians have used the interlude to drag away his heavy guns and demolish his siege works.
And before, the siege was like 2 months long before Napoleon was ultimately forced to abandon it. So starting over, yeah, not the best
In
thing.
summer, the pestilential marshes that surround the city are lethal. The Austrian garrison has been decimated by disease, mostly malaria.
Wow, almost
General
half.
Serrurier, commanding the French siege, also contracts the disease. He returns to France to recover and is replaced by General Sauge. Sickness and a shortage of equipment once more plague the French army in Italy. Even the heroic General Massena asks to be replaced, citing ill health and exhaustion. Napoleon rejects his request.
And you got to think Napoleon had to. They had just discussed that he had lost one commander to the plague. And if he knows that Massena isn't truly as sick as he's making it out to be and kind of just wants to bail, well, then he's going to force Massena to stay. And you hear about this a lot when it comes to most wars that have existed, maybe besides World War II and the modern wars succeeding that. But previously, most casualties were lost to sickness rather than direct conflict. That was the case in the Napoleonic Wars, I believe in the Civil War, and even in World War I in some cases. So when you hear about sickness, it's not that unusual to hear about it, but the amount of sickness that was in that area surrounding Mantua and the marshes was the worst in Europe. And that's Napoleon's wording himself. He called it the most unhealthy place in Europe. So it was a big deal.
Despite these problems, the Directory in Paris orders Napoleon to attack as part of a grand strategic offensive against Austria. He is to break through to Innsbruck, join forces with Moreau's Army of the Rhine, then together invade Austria and force Emperor Francis to sue for peace. Napoleon faces an enemy of roughly equal size. So he plans to use speed and concentration of force to fall upon Austrian troops in the Adige Valley and clear the path northwards. His opponent, Austrian Field Marshal von Wurmser, is under immense pressure to relieve Mantua. His staff believe that recent fighting has left the French army shattered and incapable of offensive operations. So the Austrians plan to make their own advance.
What a miscalculation.
Rather than try to force his way past French troops in the Adige Valley, Wurmser will keep Davidovich in a defensive role, while he leads a wide outflanking march via the Brenta Valley and Bassano to reach Mantua from the east. There he will link up with its garrison. And when Napoleon comes south to face him, he will be caught between two Austrian armies.
That's a smart plan by the Austrians. I doubt if Bonaparte had command of the Austrian forces, he could have contrived it better for his own purposes. So that's kind of a shot at the Austrian army from this British observer here.
The Austrians begin their advance on the 1st of September. French forces begin their advance the following day. Massena pushes up the Adige Valley, with Augereau taking a tougher, mountainous route on his right. General Vaubois marches around Lake Garda to join them, with one brigade crossing by boat. The forward Austrian outposts are driven in, and by the 4th, 3 French divisions are converging on Davidovich's heavily outnumbered force near Rovereto. General Victor leads the main attack straight up the road, driving back the enemy center.
General Victor, another name that would be very familiar in the future of France, becoming a marshal himself. And we're seeing a lot, even Savoyer, the one who had to give up the command in Mantua because he got sick, he would also become a marshal. So we're seeing a lot of familiar names here with Napoleon in Italy.
Meanwhile, French light infantry swarm up the sides of the valley to outflank the enemy. It's a tactic the French will use again and again to force the Austrians out of strong positions in the narrow passes. The Austrians are driven up the valley towards Davidovich's main camp at Calliano. As Napoleon remarks, this position should have been impregnable. Sheer mountains either side of a valley floor that's just a few hundred yards wide. A small castle and wall add to the formidable natural defenses. But its defense...
That was a fantastic painting, and I appreciate Epic History for showing us that, and I'll go back to it briefly here. This is a fantastic actual way to visualize the situation, because you see what Napoleon is talking about. This place should be naturally impenetrable. You have high ground on either side that you can rain down bullets or artillery, or whatever you want, actually. And you have to pass through this narrow sliver in the middle, where once you go in, the only way in and out is forward and backwards. There's nowhere else to run. This is a fantastic tactical area. So based on Napoleon saying it should have been one of the most best defensive areas in Europe, well, we'll see how it wasn't.
But its defense has been left to a single, shaken Austrian regiment, which is given no time to prepare. When the French hit them with speed and numbers, they give way. Massena's troops break through to the main Austrian camp, where soldiers, expecting a much longer respite, are preparing dinner. The arrival of the French sparks chaos and confusion.
So you got to think that the reason that the Austrians probably left one division there to defend that narrow pass that Napoleon said should have been impenetrable is because they thought the French were tired and weak, as they discussed at the beginning of the video. So that's why the Austrians were here preparing dinner. In hindsight, they seem absolutely ridiculous for only leaving one division behind and, you know, getting caught basically with their pants down here, you know, very soon after. And also you see Massena's initiative, you know, him, Augereau, another future French marshal, and the other general, I'll have to be forgiven for not remembering his name, all breached through, but Massena's troops were the one that launched that instant pursuit and caught them off guard. They didn't talk about Napoleon giving those direct orders, and that shows how competent Massena was for Napoleon during these early campaigns.
Immediately jammed with fleeing troops, wagons and guns. The French round up around 3,000 prisoners, alongside 25 guns and 7 standards.
Another situation where the Austrians take over 3 times the amount of casualties that Napoleon's forces took. Absolutely insane.
Napoleon had thought that he faced the whole Austrian army around Trento. But now, speaking with prisoners and locals, he learns that Wurmser and half his army have set off down the Brenta Valley. Destination unknown. With typical speed and decisiveness, Napoleon tears up the plan to join Moreau at Innsbruck and orders a pursuit. If he can catch and destroy Wurmser before he reaches safety, the war in Italy will be won.
On the 8th, I shall be at Bassano. If the enemy waits for me, there will be a battle which decides the fate of this whole country. Napoleon in one of his letters to the Directory. And Napoleon is such a fantastic wordsmith to make you feel the emotion and the significance of what he's doing. In reality, the Battle of Bassano did happen. Did this battle in particular decide the entire fate of the Italian campaign? No. The Austrians would send even more forces. But the way that Napoleon makes this sound, you would think that not just the fate of the country is at hand, but the fate of all of Europe is at hand because of this one battle at the end of the valley. And it, of course, it did hold significance. That's why we're here talking about it right now. But at the end of the day, Napoleon was fantastic at using his words very precisely and never missing a beat.
When Wurmser receives news of the fiasco at Calliano, his troops are already strung out along the Brenta Valley, with his vanguard approaching Vicenza. There is nothing to gain by turning back. He orders Davidovich to hold the passes north, assuming they are Napoleon's objective, and pushes on to Mantua.
This is a random question because I would really like to learn more about the Napoleonic era. So I really, really hope and would like you guys to leave an answer to this in the comments below. If Wurmser is here on the right side of the Brenta Valley, or this would be the east side of the Brenta Valley, and Davidovich is there stuck north, how did they have like scouts or messengers or individual people like ride through the mountains or through side trails to deliver this communication? The question I'm asking is, how exactly did someone like Wurmser in this situation communicate with Davidovich? How did they get those orders out to them so fast? Please, somebody let me know in the comments below. There's a lot more that I need to learn about this period of history.
But Napoleon is not going north. He orders Vaubois to pursue Davidovich and keep him blocked in, while Augereau's division leads the rest of the army down the narrow, funnel-like Brenta Valley in pursuit of the Austrians. The army of Italy is brimming with confidence and momentum, and marches much faster than the Austrians. A small force at Levico offers token resistance before it's bundled down the Brenta Valley. The next day, French light infantry rout a 3,000-strong Austrian rearguard at Primulano, taking most of them prisoner. Wurmser decides to make another stand at Bassano, where the valley opens into flat plains. With Colonel Lannes leading the charge, the Austrians are driven back, then chased into town by Murat's cavalry. Amid panic, chaos, and blocked roads, the French take another 2,000 prisoners, including an Austrian general and 30 guns.
Oh my God! The Battle of Bassano, can you call 400 casualties to 2,600 a battle? And that's not including the prisoners that the French took earlier in the Brenta Valley. They said they took like almost 3,000 prisoners earlier in the Brenta Valley with some of the Austrians that tried to hold up. These numbers, over 6 times, like 6 times the casualty rate for the Austrians versus the French. This is an absolute domination. This is hardly a battle.
Wurmser is in disarray, down to 12,000 men, outnumbered 2 to 1, with part of his force retreating in the wrong direction towards Trieste. His only hope is to reach Mantua.
Wow, we went from like Wurmser having this fantastic plan where he was going to launch this 2-pronged attack, delay Napoleon here, because the intelligence must have been right. The Wurmser might have known that Napoleon had orders from the Directory to head north and form up with Jourdan's army. But Napoleon didn't really care to follow the orders if he knew what was best. He would later go on to refer to the Directory as a government of lawyers who know nothing about the field of battle. So Napoleon, I'm sure he didn't have a problem contradicting his orders, but we went from that situation where Wurmser seemed to know what Napoleon was doing to now full panic, part of his army retreating the wrong way, completely stranded with the French outnumbering him significantly.
Are in a foot race, but for the first time in the campaign, Austrian soldiers outmarch their exhausted French counterparts.
Panic and adrenaline.
Wurmser leaves a small garrison at the fortress of Legnago to slow Augereau's pursuit. Forging ahead, Massena manages to block the Austrians' path at Cherea.
Once again, Massena taking the initiative, forging ahead, blocking the Austrians, really taking that extra step as a general. I would say that Massena is Napoleon's greatest general in this first Italian campaign.
But General Ott makes a determined attack and clears the road, taking 700 French prisoners and 7 guns. It is a rare defeat for Massena.
It was extremely ambitious to try to cut off 12,000 men. I'm not sure exactly how big Massena's force is, but I'm sure it wasn't 12,000. So for him to be defeated, even just trying to slow them down, maybe he knew defeat was inevitable if he tried to do that maneuver, but just to stop them and result in the capture of the army and possibly winning the Italian campaign, at least to their knowledge, would have been huge. So massive respect to Massena for even trying that.
With the help of a local informant, Wurmser then finds an intact, unguarded bridge across the Tione River and reaches the outskirts of Mantua on the 13th of September. His army has been saved from destruction by the skin of its teeth.
All right, this quote from Ramsay Weston Phipps, British military historian. What soldier could fail to admire the gallant old Wurmser, never depressed by defeat, who, have been hunted from the Brenta to Mantua, now stood in front of the garrison determined to cut his way back. So he was clearly a very resilient man, Wurmser was.
Napoleon has failed to prevent Wurmser reaching Mantua. But he knows that if he can bottle him up inside the city, it will put intolerable strain on its supplies. For that reason, Wurmser wants to keep his army outside the city walls, free to maneuver, and, crucially, forage for supplies in the surrounding country.
Because in terms of Mantua, Wurmser losing would be even, like, Wurmser losing and getting caught in the city with the garrison that's already stuck there and suffering from plague and losing numbers and has limited supplies. Having an additional 12,000 men join Mantua in that siege to have to use the supplies and spread them even more thinly would actually make the siege take less time than if Wurmser just lost and retreated and then the Austrians came again. This is like the worst case scenario.
The next morning, as Augereau accepts the surrender of the Austrian garrison at Legnago, Massena tries a surprise attack at Due Castelli.
Man, Massena.
But it's overambitious. His men have not had time to recover from their long march, and the Austrians fight bravely. The following day, Napoleon launches a much larger, coordinated attack. Sauge's division advances on the right. His troops are soon in heavy fighting with Ott's brigade around the Villa La Favorita. Augereau's division, under temporary command of General Bonne, advances along the Mincio River, trying to turn the Austrian right flank. When Wurmser sends reserves from his centre to strengthen both flanks, Massena's concealed division launches its attack.
That was a beautiful touch by epic history to actually conceal Napoleon's main division in the center there, because I barely saw it. I only saw it a couple seconds prior to when it actually launched.
Victor and Rampont lead the way with their veteran demi-brigades. Austrian cavalry hurl themselves at the French, but are beaten off. Heavy fighting rages on the outskirts of Mantua for much of the afternoon. Finally, Wurmser's centre begins to crumble, and the French take San Giorgio. Much of the Austrian right wing is cut off. Many are forced to surrender, while others flee into the lake.
Oh.
With the Austrian
Fleeing into the lake with the level of sickness that was at hand in this situation at Mantua, you're assuring your own fate.
shattered, Wurmser orders his men to fall back to the safety of Mantua's citadel.
Wow, you're attacking a defensive position. A defensive position. Napoleon is attacking the Austrians as they're set up in this major defensive position. And he still takes less than half the casualties that they did. This campaign is an absolute masterclass. And in my opinion, when you look at the campaign as a collective, because you can argue Ulm and Austerlitz are better battlefield in particular battles as opposed to these, but this is the most impressive campaign that Napoleon has ever fought, because you have to think about it. He's also overcoming the difficulties of not being in charge. This is meant as a sideshow. The other two armies are 2 times bigger. France isn't giving this army the attention that it needs to be able to, fulfill and do things properly. Napoleon ends up lacking reinforcements in this campaign and still absolutely dominates.
The troops that were to have rescued Mantua are now trapped alongside its garrison. By early October, the French have cut off the city and resumed their siege. Conditions inside Mantua deteriorate rapidly. Disease, wounds and malnutrition kill on average nearly 100 Austrian soldiers every day for 6 weeks.
Oh my God. When they said it took 100 lives every day and then added the 6 weeks at the end, it's like, holy crap. That is over 4,000 men. That's over 4,000 men.
Civilians are reduced to eating rats and horses. Napoleon, meanwhile, returns to Milan, sending his aide-de-camp, Major Marmont, to Paris to present 22 captured Austrian standards to the Directory.
Standards and actual flag bearing is a lost art in modern warfare that doesn't exist anymore. But to have 22 standards was astonishing at that time. That was almost unheard of.
But elsewhere, the war has not been going so well for France. Archduke Charles, younger brother of the Emperor Francis, has defeated General Jourdan's army twice in 2 weeks. It and General Moreau's army of the Rhine are forced to retreat back to the frontier. These setbacks mean Napoleon will get very few of the reinforcements he's so urgently requested. He
got a little over a tenth of the reinforcements that he wanted.
Men are exhausted. Many of them are sick. They must contain an enormous and increasingly desperate garrison in Mantua, with the certain knowledge that the Austrians will try again soon to save the city. And there are diplomatic concerns which also trouble Napoleon. In Rome, the Pope stirs animosity against the French, citing their treatment of the Catholic Church in the territories they administer. These now include the Cispadane Republic, formed in part from the Duchy of Modena, which Napoleon has abolished for colluding with the enemy.
Napoleon, as a general, abolishing states. That showed his political ambition.
So the lingering threat that Naples may rejoin the war at a critical moment to stab him in the back. So, to secure his southern flank, Napoleon concludes a comprehensive peace treaty with Naples without bothering to consult the Directory. It's actions like this that feed the whispers in Paris. This popular young general's ambition seems limitless. Might he not one day prove a dangerous political player? But such talk will be moot if Napoleon fails in Italy. That autumn, as Austrian troops march once more to the relief of Mantua, he will face his most skilled opponent yet, Feldzugmeister Joseph Alvinci, the first man to defeat Napoleon Bonaparte in battle. A big thank you to PMF.
That was amazing. That was incredible. And maybe I'm thinking that in part also on top of Epic History's phenomenal presentation and narration that they always have, is the fact that that was one of the most interesting videos I've seen on Napoleon. The tactics with the tight corridors and the Brenta Valley and ultimately the retreat and the last minute stand outside the city walls, how the Austrians and Wormser got pushed into Mantua, and then ultimately the hook. How did Napoleon lose? Well, we'll be diving into that in the next video at Arcalay. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit like and subscribe if you did. I would really appreciate it if you guys joined me on this journey. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out. And of course, leave any comments challenging anything that I said in the video. We are all for open debate here. I absolutely love historical conversation, and I will be reading all the comments. Anyway, peace out, everybody.